If the drawing is a cartoon rather than a recorder, as I assert, it was not one from which the painter pressed through the outlines, even though it is to the same scale as the Pallavicini picture. By process of elimination, its main function must therefore have been to show the colours, for Barocci prepared every last detail before picking up his paintbrushes. Not only was the disposition of the figures decided upon, but also the full range of colours. Although Barocci describes the cartoons for the colours as reduced, there is no reason why Barocci should not have made a full-scale one in this instance, given the small, intimate format of the Pallavicini painting, well within the size of available sheets of paper. Here we have the pentiment for the apron and the blue drapery compared to this detail with the shadow and the different position for the blue drapery and a very different position or very different structure for the crib. Up until now, I have not focused attention on the verso study of a torso of a bearded man. At first sight, its looser handling seems more characteristic of Barocci's hand than the main study, since it recalls his widely known studies in coloured chalk for his great painted compositions. All the evidence considered thus far points to a date of circa 1567 for the group of the Madonna and Child. If this is correct, then the study of the torso of a man on the verso, which seems to be a fragment of a larger study, has to have been drawn earlier. Not rating it sufficiently highly, Barocci must have cut the sheet down so that the blank side of the sheet might serve as the actual size cartoon for the colours in the Pallavicini picture. To understand the verso study better, every clue must be pondered before the sheet was cut down. The male figure must have continued by a certain amount at the top as well as to the right. By how much is unclear. The horizontal crease just above the bottom edge of the paper in the nude study on the verso is very likely the centre fold of what must once have been a much larger sheet. If that is so, then the figure would have extended downwards considerably further, suggesting that what we now see as a male thorax may well have been a half-length nude drawn as far down as the waist. Attempts to connect the male torso directly with any of Barocci's painted works have so far failed, but it may be usefully compared with the upper part of the figure of St. Sebastian in Barocci's early altarpiece of the Martyrdom of St. Sebastian in Urbino Cathedral, commissioned in 1557 by the heirs of Antonio Bonaventura and completed by 1560, the year when Barocci set off for Rome. Barocci was only 22 years old when he began work on the canvas. There are obvious differences between the painted figure and the partial study of a male torso. They include the clean-shaven face of the saint, as compared with the bearded figure in the drawing, the saint's raised right arm, as compared with the lowered right arm of the drawn figure, and the shadow cast across the saint's upper body, as compared with the evenly lit thorax study. Among the similarities, on the other hand, are the angle of the man's body, which in both the drawn and painted figures is half turned to the right, the upward slope from left to right of the upper arm, shoulder, and neck, and the treatment of the man's breasts, especially his left, which protrudes very slightly as it sags, catching the light more prominently in the painted figure than here in the drawing. Since the physical evidence of the paper seems to suggest that the male nude in the drawing may have been conceived originally as a half-length, this is consistent with an interpretation of it being for the St. Sebastian in the Urbino Cathedral picture. It's difficult to see here in this image that St. Sebastian's left arm descends, not in the same way, but similarly here. And there seems to me to be rather a parallel here. And what I think is worth emphasizing also is the way this shoulder is so rounded in the way that this shoulder is rounded. I mean, it seems to me that there could be a fit, but obviously one can't take things too far. An early compositional study in pen and brown wash with some corrections in red chalk for the figures in the lower half of Barocci's altarpiece in Urbino Cathedral is in the Fitzwilliam Museum, Cambridge, with the figure of St. Sebastian prominent to the right. At first sight, the Fitzwilliam drawings seems far from typical of Barocci's draftsmanship, since the touch seems coarse and the placement of the figures confused, especially when compared with his extraordinarily accomplished compositional drawings from later in his career. So there we are. That seems to me to be a possible solution, which remains to be confirmed when some new piece of information comes along to support it, or perhaps to deny it. Even if we cannot definitively pin down the purpose of the verso, I hope that I have been able to shed new light on the importance and function of the recto. The drawn Madonna reading with the Christ child on her lap forms an important link in a chain of at least 3 versions of a composition that must date from circa 1567 and no later. So strong is their connection with the altarpiece of the Madonna di San Simone that the works must surely have evolved together with the smaller, less ambitious design intended for private devotional purposes, taking its inspiration from some ideas that were not developed in the main altarpiece. For a man in frail health whose perfectionism drove him to lavish hours on processes that were habitually bypassed by fellow artists, it comes as something of a relief to see his successful production of 1 or 2 spin-offs from one of his important inventions. For once, a rare example in his work of economy of effort. Thank you very much.
I just wondered if the newly discovered version of the Madonna Child that you showed as the first in the sequence, if the X-ray revealed anything at the lower right where the cradle takes shape in the drawing and fully appears in the Pallavicini version.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
You showed an X-ray, a detail
Yes.
of an X-ray of the new
Yes.
version of the Madonna Child, and I just wondered, because you talked about the vacant lower right corner of the picture. I just wondered if the X-ray showed anything.
No,
in that
nothing
section
at all.
So nothing.
Nothing
It's
at
not like
all. I mean,
anything was there that was changed.
It's reassuring to see it, if you like, unfinished. When you've seen the other 2 versions with the cradle in the corner, and you then go back to the new picture, it looks incomplete. And I suppose that, in a way, justifies Barocci's correction, even if it looks a little bit forced.
Nicholas, the drawing in the Fitzwilliam, did he have another attribution before? I just would be interested to know what he was called. before your attribution to Barocci?
Well, I can't, to be honest, I can't remember what it was called. No, it seems so long ago. Yeah.
Is the decal edge missing from the Madonna on the one side that would indicate the cut from the back?
Yes, possibly. Yes, I think probably. Yeah. It's difficult to make generalizations, as I have presumed to do here, without really studying carefully the edges of the paper. But the fact that the width of the drawing is precisely the same as the Pallavicini picture implies to me that Barocci got hold of one of his old drawings, which he'd outgrown, if you like, and for him the clean paper at that moment was worth more than preserving the old nude study. But oh, is it? Oh, right, all right, sorry. God, do as I'm told. Yeah, but I mean, that may be... the fold of the paper is here.
Yeah, and the fold is there, and then it would continue to the right, and
So that is where he cut it. Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I'm a bit slow, you know, sometimes. Oh, Mr. Esposito.
Reading connecting the verso with Saint Sebastian is stronger if you think that the arms, the orientation of the arms looks as though they were banned behind the body,
Oh, yes, that's true.
which I think only reinforces what.
Yes. Thank you very much. That's very supportive. Yes. Yeah. I'll take that idea over if I may.
Have you a conjecture as to how large the original sheet was? Because was it a full-size figure, in which case it would be an immense piece of paper, no?
Well, I think it would have been a standard imperial-sized folio, folded in half, which certainly in Rome in the late 16th and early 17th century was the sort of paper they used. I mean, it was the sort of format of paper that was commonly used. You think that was too big? Questioning. Yeah. We ought really to try and work out what sort of paper it is as well, because it might, I suspect, it may well be a Venetian paper. No, I think the bottom one does look right for a, yes. You see, we do know, well, some of us know, where this drawing was before Dee bought it, or where it was before it was sold by a certain dealer. And it may well have been in an English collection for a very long time. And I'm sure that you can see that it was obviously once framed. It may also have been laid down. And that too is something that one can, maybe some restorer has removed all that evidence in order to bring back the verso to life. But all this sort of evidence needs to be looked at, I think. Well, thank you very much.